Bonjour, 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 and welcome back to my channel, The Waves of Your Soul. Today's video is going to be a part 2 to a little series I started last month. I'll share with you mass market tarot and oracle decks, which in my opinions are underrated. They're hidden gems. They are not really as well known as some other super famous mass market decks, and yet they deserve their time in their spotlight. Actually a subject I started talking way back when I started my channel 2 years ago. I made a couple of videos about this theme of like hidden gems, underrated mass market gems. I've been asked in the comments ever since to revisit this subject and to share more, and like I said, this is episode 2. You can find episode 1 right now in the cards. I'll put it in the cards and in the description box. All the decks I'm going to present to you are all mass market, meaning they should be easier to find, most likely more affordable than indie decks, but they all, in my opinion, are underrated, meaning that maybe we don't see them as much on social media or in tarot readings video, etc. And yet, for me, they totally deserve their time in the spotlight. They deserve to be known, they deserve to be shared because they are awesome. This is also a way to share with you decks that maybe are easier to find, maybe more approachable for everyone. I love indie decks so much, quite a few of them. It's a privilege for me to be able to support indie artists, but I understand that this privilege is not shared by everybody. I wanted to share with you some awesome decks to show that even if indie decks are not in your budget, there's still some awesome hidden gems out there that you can find in your local bookshops, on Amazon, or all of those kind of like websites. As per usual, all the names of the decks are going to be in the description box below. This is not a sponsored video. All the opinions are my own and my own only. If it's your first time here, I want to say a huge welcome. My name is Marine. I'm a French tarot reader and a lover of everything tarot, oracle, and self-empowerment related. On my channel, I love talking about decks. They're a huge passion of mine, as you're gonna see. I just love cards. I love tarot. I love oracle. It's such an important tool in my life journey. It's something that brings me so much joy and so much empowerment and so much knowledge. But I also love reading the cards. So I also offer pick a card readings on my channel. If you'd like to see any of those things on your timeline, make sure to subscribe. You can hit the bell so you're notified of all of my future videos. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't hesitate to give it a thumbs up. It's a small gesture, but it does truly help my channel out, and it's a nice exchange of energy. And if you want to see any more videos or my other social media links, it's all gonna be in the description box below. Now that I've done my good YouTuber intro, let's get into underrated mass market decks part 2. Like I said on the intro, the aim of this little series I'm doing, and I'm thinking of doing an episode a month until I run out of decks to share with you. But the aim is truly to just share with you decks that, in my opinion, we don't see enough of. Whether it's through YouTube videos, Instagram, all of those, it's decks that I've noticed maybe are not shared as much as some other mass market decks, and yet I believe that they are very useful, very cool, very unique. They offer an interesting point of view. They're great readers. So that's kind of like what I wanted to talk about today. Let's start with one of my kookiest and yet coolest deck I own. This is the Kitty Kahani Tarot. Now, I originally have the Urania version, which is the German version, but now you can actually find the English version mass market as well. Even better now for those of you watching who are wanting to purchase now, because you can actually find the English version, which is really cool. But this originally was an indie deck that got picked up mass market, I believe 3 years ago or something like that. I did use Google Translate to translate the guidebook, and the little guidebook is very cool. The main thing for me that really stood out is the amount of cool spreads that there is, and thanks to Google Translate I was able to translate quite a few of them. But obviously if you have an English guidebook, that's even easier. But the spreads in this are really awesome, and I really enjoyed reading what the author has to say. So don't sleep on this little guidebook. Like I said, at the beginning was an indie deck. It got picked up mass market, so that's awesome for us, meaning we can find it for a more affordable price. And honestly, this is one of those decks that is super kooky, super cool. The color palette is very unique, as you're gonna see if I do this. There's a lot of like purples and lilacs and turquoise, which are 3 of my favorite colors. I mean, really I'm a color lover, so obviously I'm a bit biased there, but the unique color palette I think think makes this deck stand out. For me, it's the perfect deck for those of you who've been lusting after a deck in the lines of the Saki Saki Tarot, or I believe now it's called the I Am the Artist, or those kind of like very kooky, artistic decks with a unique personality. There's a lot of awesome indie decks out there that do that, and not that many mass market options, but this one for me definitely like scratch that itch, this is the English saying, for that kind of like very artistic, kooky, unique, cheeky, and in its own world point of view. Find something so charming about the artwork. First of all, obviously this is something that's personal, but to me the artwork really does it. The colors, the line work. On top of that, the choices made for each of the cards I think are super clever. Like, for example, here in the Magician, we see the Magician with their tools. They have the cup, the wand, the sword, and the pentacle. The thing that really makes for me this card extra special and extra fun as well is that we see the universe or God or source, whatever you choose to believe in, is giving them a little light of inspiration. It's like giving them that little light bulb moment, that little ting idea. And so now the Magician is feeling divine inspiration, is feeling that inspiration to make something, to create something, to manifest. It's that inspired idea. For me, this is that little light bulb moment that's like giving you the prompt, giving you the little trigger to say, this is the way you need to go. So I love that. It's something so small, but it suddenly turns the card, and it just adds another lens to the card that I really appreciate. As you're gonna see from me flipping the cards, it's very much inspired by the Rider-Waite-Smith or Waite-Smith Tarot. So for those of you who are beginners and used to that particular system, I think it would be a very approachable deck. That being said, it still in some ways does its own thing, but it's not to the point where if you are familiar with the RWS, you wouldn't be able to just take this deck and read it off the go. You know, the Seven of Wands is very Seven of Wandsy. It's still very much the essence of the cards that we're used to seeing. Here, the Two of Pentacles, the difference is instead of being on land, they're actually surfing a fish in the water, which I guess makes it even more unpractical, but also mean that if you learn to go with the flow and adapt to the tides and waves of the universe, of life, of changes, then it might be easier for you to learn how to juggle. So there's a lot of wisdom hidden in tiny details in this deck, and I think that it's where its unique power is at. For example, the Six of Swords, instead of them going through a boat, they're actually like sitting on swords, meaning that I mean, I've never done that myself, but I can only imagine that a canoe or some kind of like boat made of swords would probably cut your butt, right? Like that would probably be very uncomfortable. Also kind of transpiring the essence of what the Six of Swords mean. The Six of Swords represents moving from a difficult situation to calmer waters, but oftentimes we tend to carry on a little bit of that baggage of the wounds, of the trauma or the fears or any kind of blockages from that past situation into the next. Like it's that kind of momentum of like, yes, we're moving on to calmer shores, calmer water, but it's not a complete fresh start. We are still carrying like the wounds of that past event. And I can only imagine that traveling, even though yes, to somewhere that looks much cooler and calmer is fantastic, but traveling on a boat made out of swords would cut your butt and make you feel like you are obviously still carrying some wounds here, very literally, but also metaphorically, of where you've come. So I think in some very fun little ways this deck is very wise. So as you can see, I've got the German version, but on all the minors there's not the actual German names, it's just a number, so that makes it even easier for me to read because I don't speak German, and the majors are very easy to recognize, like this is obviously death, so it makes it a deck that's super easy to read. So overall for me it's a super great reader. It's very clever. There's tons here to get into. If you want to do a deep dive on each card, you've got so much to like get into. For example, here we see with the Ten of Pentacles, normally we're used to seeing a family with a dog and they're in a house and everything. Here the person carries their family inside, almost giving like the idea of us carrying on our bloodline through our genetics, through obviously our genealogy, through in our body, literally carrying on the DNA of our ancestors, but also in our soul, carrying on what we've been given, voluntarily or not, from our forefathers, from the people who came before us, from our ancestors. And so this particular idea of heritage here, it's depicted not only as like literal family, but also what you carry within yourself, within your body, that's been given to you, within your soul, that's been given to you, again, voluntarily or not, from the people that came before you, from your family lines, from your ancestors. So I think that's another very powerful way of looking at the Ten of Pentacles, and can open new ways to read. For those of you who want something a bit more fresh and new in their practice, you're getting a bit bored in your decks and you want to open your mind a little bit, but still be able to anchor yourself in the RWS knowledge. If it's something that you're used to working, then I think this particular deck is perfect for that. Let's move on to another tarot deck, obviously a mass market deck, but this is actually a deck that maybe not is underrated, because I think a lot of you know the Encore Tarot by Ciro Marchetti. I believe a lot of you would be familiar with Marchetti's work. He's done a lot of decks, a lot of indie decks, a lot of mass market decks. This particular deck in English, it's only available as indie, but you can get the Encore Tarot as a French mass market version, and that is the underrated part that I believe maybe not a lot of you know about, especially if you're non-French speakers. I feel like if you're French, you probably have seen this deck in like bookshops and stuff, but if you are not, then maybe you don't realize that you can get this particular deck mass market on Amazon.fr and things like that. And this is the only Marchetti deck I own, because this actually is 82 cards, and it's 82 of his favorite cards. Like, out of all the body of work that Ciro Marchetti has done, this is like his favorite that he has taken from all of his different decks. I think he's like slightly remanipulated the images so that everything looks in the same tones, in the same colors, etc. But this is almost like his best body of work. And so when I saw that this particular deck was available mass market in French, I was like, well, that's perfect. It's cheaper, it's easier to get. And I finally have, for me, the best Marchetti deck out there, because like I said, this is, according to him, the best cards of all of his decks. And to be honest, I agree. So here are the back, and the sides are red gilding, because if you don't know yet, French decks usually have a lot of gilding. We love gilding, apparently. It's something that is very popular here. So as I was saying, I don't think any of Marchetti's decks are underrated, because they are very popular in the community, and this deck is also popular in the community, but the actual French version, which is mass market, I believe is underrated, because I don't think a lot of people realize that you can get this deck mass market in French. As you're gonna see, the titles of the cards are in French, obviously, but honestly, this is very intuitive and easy to read, that I believe you would be able to understand which cards are which, especially because they are all numbered. So even if you don't know that Le Monde is the world, if you are used to Tarot de Marseille or Italian decks, things like that, you would probably recognize a lot of the majors. But if you are not familiar with any of that, you have the number 21 here to go off, so that would allow you, on top of the image of course, to realize this is the world. And then for again, for the minors, you have the number and you have the title, and it's very similar to the English, like coupe or cups, etc. So I believe even if you don't speak French, because this follows the tarot system, you would be very fine to take it and read it as is, without even needing to read the guidebook. Obviously, if you do want to read the guidebook, you can use the Google Translate, like I've done with the previous deck I was telling you about, which was in German, which I personally don't speak. So there's lots of ways you can use like foreign decks to your advantage. But this follows very closely the RWS, so I think, again, it's quite easy to use. For me, this is the best Marchetti deck, because it's kind of regrouping a lot of the cards that I enjoy from his other decks. I watched a lot of walkthroughs of all of the different decks that was out there from him, and I almost got the one that's called The Divine something, Legacy of the Divine, something like that, which I really enjoyed. But then when I found out that this was coming out mass market, I realized a lot of the cards here are my favorites as well, and so it was like the best of both worlds. It was like everything grouping here for me to enjoy a Marchetti deck without having to buy several of them. The fact that he has kind of like remanipulated the images so that everything looks seamless, I think it makes it a very easy reader. This is one of those decks I can just pick up, take out of the box and read with, and I don't have to think about it too much. It's very easy, it's very intuitive. You see it, you get your message and you move on. Like, this is one of those very sharpshooter decks for me, very intuitive like I was saying. The particularity of this deck is it's not 78 cards as we are used normally. There is actually 4 extra cards which are the palace. So we have for each of the suit a palace card. So we have here the palace of wands, there's a palace of cups, pentacles, etc. And the palace represents the card of where the court people would live. So imagine the palace of wands, it's like an imagination of where the queen of wands and king of wands and knight of wands and page of wands are living. It's like giving us a glimpse into the world they rule over. And for me, this is actually super clever, and I love the fact that it's there, even though normally I don't always like keep extra cards in decks. In this particular case, I've kept all of the palace cards in because for me, there we go, we have the palace of pentacles here. First, they're gorgeous, and I think it's very interesting to think about where the court would live, what kingdom would they rule over, what kind of like world do they belong to, etc. But on top of that, in terms of how to read when I do pull that card in a reading, is I usually think of the palace as like taking care of your home. So that can have different meaning, whether it's like your physical home, meaning like where you live, your environment, etc. But also it could be your body, your mind, like where your soul live within yourself. So for me, you know, my body is also my home. So the palace also allows me to think about what is my internal palace like at this moment. Am I taking care of my body? Am I taking care of my mind, of myself? Am I a nice place right now to live in? Am I cultivating within myself a nice palace for my inner knight, page, queen and king to live in? And that allows me to do this kind of introspection work, to think about my interior life as like some kind of a landscape that my soul, that my mind, my emotions could evolve and grow into. So that's kind of like how I read the palace. One of those decks for me that I love to read, especially for others, because it's like I don't have to think about what the cards are trying to tell me. It's just very clear, and I enjoy a deck that allows me to do that. This is probably one of my favorite magicians ever. I love the fact that they're surrounded by animals. I think they're very like, they're giving very druid vibe. It's a magician who's very earthy, who's very like anchored into the natural world, and they're also giving like old wizard and magical wizard, and I trust them, like they give a good vibe. Around a really cool deck that I wanted to shout out, in case you didn't know that this was available mass market in French. I wanted to let you know, put it out there, and I'll put the link for this in the description box below for those of you who are interested. Let's move on to an oracle deck that I believe I included in my top oracle decks of 2022, because when I got it last year, it just blew my mind, and I was like, wow, this is awesome, and more people need to know about this. This is the Unshakable Inner Peace Oracle cards by Shannon Kaser, and this is a 44 card deck. Again, this is mass market, which is the theme of this video, as you've guessed from now. The guidebook is very well done. For each of the card, you have a mini image of that particular card. You have your message here, and then you have the divine assignments message, which is, again, it's more prompts into actual actions you could take to put this message into place. Finally, you have questions, like questions to ask, and you have that for each of the cards. So the questions could actually be very good journaling prompts if you wanted to go deeper, or you could use the questions as a way to create a tarot spread around that particular theme. So here, in what ways am I abundant right now? Maybe you could pull a couple of oracle cards or tarot cards to show ways you, maybe in which ways you are abundant, potentially ways you don't realize. Maybe you're abundant in friends, etc., not necessarily money. So really cool, interesting guidebook. The guidebook is great, but you don't necessarily need to use it because a lot of the information is on the card, which makes it actually a very easy reader. Again, for me, this is one of those convenient decks that if I just want a message and I just want to know what's going on, pull a card, whether it's at the end of a reading. If I'm doing pick card readings, I love love to use this one as like a round off, like we finish it off and we get our last message. Especially because on each of the card you get your key sentences. So here it says you create your own reality, what you wants you to, what do you want to experience. So kind of like similarly to the guidebook, for each of the card you have a key sentence and you have that question from the guidebook who's repeated here too. So I love using this for like I was saying, in my pick a card readings or when I'm reading for others, to wrap up the reading as like a last message, something that they can ask themselves, something they can walk away with thinking, okay, this is a question or something I can hold on, like an anchor to kind of tie the reading down. But I for myself also love using it honestly for daily card pulls, or like at night if I'm finishing the day and I just want one message, something short but that's gonna be like a summary of what's just happened, or if I'm going through my day and something is bothering me and I just need like a little bit of guidance or closure on what's going on, I would use this deck. And finally, for any kind of like journaling work, this deck is awesome because on every single card you have a question. So if I'm feeling like I want to journal but I'm not really sure like what I want to journal on, and I need a little bit of inspiration or a push, or I need help to like uncover what it is that I want to unearth, then this deck would be a very useful prompt, because I can use the question that's on the card as a starting point, and like I was saying, either do some journaling or pull some more tarot cards, etc. So that's kind of how I've been using this particular deck. Top of that, we can agree that the artwork is gorgeous. I mean, come on, this is so beautiful. I love this kind of like collage style. It's very much my vibe. I mean, I have a very eclectic taste. I say that in a lot of my videos. I like a lot of things. I have a very broad, varied, eclectic taste, which means that I like a lot of things and my wallet is very sad about it. But collage as an art form is something that speaks to my soul. It's something that I really enjoy. So when I first saw the aesthetic of this deck, I really enjoyed it because it's something that I knew it would pair beautifully with a lot of the collage decks that I own, whether it's the Uncommon for a mass market deck, or whether it's the Lioness Oracle, or the Spolia Tarot, or any of those like more indie collage decks that I have and love. So this is a very well-rounded deck. I have many ways I have found to use it, and so it's proven to be a very good ally, a very good friend that I can count on, that I can rely on. This has to be my favorite card, I think, because it's a woman swimming with dolphins in the sky. Like, how cool is that? I want to do that. That's dream life right here. Next lifetime, that's what I want to do as my job. Swimming with dolphins in the sky. That's it. That's the dream right here. So, the Unshakable Inner Peace Oracle. It's a bit of a mouthful. I think they could have found maybe a shorter, easier to say title. But as a deck, it's awesome. 10 out of 10 recommend. Let's move on to a tarot deck I've been obsessed the last couple of months. This is the Symbolic Soul Tarot by Elisa Seitzinger. Again, I'm so sorry if I'm butchering that. Please feel free, if you know how to pronounce this, to correct me in the comments. This is a Lo Scarabeo deck, and I got this on Book Depository before it closed. Still mourning the loss of you, because it was my main place for getting my English mass market decks, and honestly, the world is not the same without it, at least my world. Lo Scarabeo, it comes in one of those boxes that opens like this. Really cool box, really good quality. Can I say before we get into it that this might be the best quality Lo Scarabeo deck I've ever had. The cardstock is matte, it's not sticky, but it feels like just matte and nice. We have gold every single card, the quality of everything, it's just 10 out of 10. It kind of feels indie, to be honest. Like, honestly, for the price I've paid, which wasn't very much at the time, I did not expect to receive this kind of quality, and this is definitely not the same cardstock as my previous Lo Scarabeo decks, even though I don't have anything bad to say about them. I love Lo Scarabeo decks. They're easy to shuffle, they're easy to replace. If I mess them up, I know I can get them again for cheap, so I don't mind the cardstock for Lo Scarabeo, but this is definitely something else. Like, it feels like they've upped their quality for sure. The book is your stereotypical Lo Scarabeo guidebook in the sense that it has different languages. Each of the cards, you get quite a bit of a of a message. You get a few keywords, and then you get a bit here, the meaning of the card, your guidance, etc. I definitely think that this is interesting to read. I found that it was giving an interesting perspective. Not my favorite Los Scarabeo guidebook, like some of them hit, some of them are really bops. I don't know if I can say that or if I just cringe myself. But some of Los Scarabeo books are bops, and this one, even it's not the best one out there, but it's definitely not the worst either. So if you've got this deck, it's worth checking out. It has some interesting things to say. I actually want to thank my friend Sylvia over at Fairlight Tarot for sharing this deck. If you don't know Sylvia, I will leave the link to her channel down below. She's very sweet. She's an Italian tarot reader who currently lives in Australia. And so go and tell her I say hi. But I originally saw this deck on her channel, and she's the only one who I saw really talk about this deck. Like, I saw this deck on her channel, but I've not seen it anywhere else. And yet as soon as I saw this deck, it was for me love at first sight. I had to order it straight away. Like I said, it took a good few months for me to have it, just because at the time Book Depository, when it was open, things just take a long time to come to me anyway, especially when it's things that are like free shipping. It took a very long time to come, but ever since I've received it about 2 months ago, it's been truly a deck I can't put down. Can you see what I meant about the gold on every single card? Like, the quality is very nice, just really cool. But it's still matte, so easy to shuffle. It definitely has a lot of hidden symbolism here that maybe you don't see at first, and yet when you spend time with the cards, will truly make you cackle. Like, I've full on giggled at the cheekiness of this deck, mainly because there are unexpected details that will make you rethink what you thought you knew about the cards. And yet there's something about the black and the gold that makes this look a little bit, how can I say that, elaborate or elegant, as my friends would say. And elegant, but with a massive sense of humor. So I've really been enjoying using this deck, because I think there's so much symbolism here to get into. There's so much little details, and everything you can tell is very thoughtful. For example, the Fool. First of all, normally we don't really know what the Fool is walking into. Here, they're fully walking into fire. Like, they don't even realize, because they have 3 different faces. She's giving very much like Hecate, goddess of the crossroad, maiden, mother, crone, 3 different faces, the fates, whatever, all of those like gods and goddesses who have different faces. The Fool itself, as the seed of this journey, as the beginning of this journey, also has different faces, which I think can tell a lot about how we also ourselves start journeys. Like, there's different ways to start something, different ways to approach it. And they even have a little snail friend here on their little rod, which is kind of to say, hey, maybe if you slow down a little bit, you would realize you're walking into a pit of fire. So there's a lot here to get into on every single card. Some of them, honestly, I don't even always understand, and yet it never leaves me feeling nothing. Like, it always makes me feel either wonder or awe or amusement, but it always triggers something within me, those cards. All the little details, like, it's impossible to get bored with this deck, is what I mean, because there's always something to look at, something interesting, something different. And for me, that's what I'm looking for in my tarot practice. Is I'm looking for decks that are going to trigger my intuition, that are going to give me different little details. It can be tiny little things that suddenly make you think of another way of seeing the Queen of Pentacles or the world, etc. Some of the cards are very traditional, like this star card. Even though the person isn't standing in water, we see we see the 2 vase, we see the birds, we see the stars, the Venus star, etc. So there is a lot here that's very traditional. Some of them take a little bit more of their own path. For example, the 10 of Cups, there's a literal UFO here, and the people here have 2 heads. So why not? Again, why not? This might be one of my favorite Hermit's card ever. I just find it so beautiful because they're fully cloaked. They have stars in their faces, meaning that it's almost like they're made of pure cosmic energy or something. And their lantern is actually a, what do you call that? A bee's nest. I forgot a hive. Sorry, that English word escaped me here. A hive, and a hive, to show you the way, I think is so clever. It's a different way to think of this. If we think of the hive and bees being wise, being like the carrier of wisdom from nature, the way that they can work together, the way that they work in communion with nature, and the hermit taking wisdom from them, I think it helps us to remind ourselves of the power of nature, the wisdom of nature. I don't know, this card I think is very well thought out, so I really enjoy it. Some of the cards definitely have a cheeky sense of humor, like this little devil here is literally pissing on that devil like, I'm gonna wet your shoes, which is very funny. And then there's a lot of the cards that actually will make you think, will make you ponder, so it's a good mix between sense of humor and very deep and wise in some ways. So really enjoy this particular deck. It be like that sometimes, right? That 10 of Wands, you've got so much on your shoulders, you feel like shit, you've already you're carrying on so much burden, and then on top of that, you walk into dog poo. Because sometimes life really can be like that, it just piles it onto you. But you know what? Hashtag relatable, we've all been there. So that's what I mean, this deck is just fun. It definitely has a strong sense of personality, and for me, massively underrated. Let's finish this particular episode with one last oracle deck, one last underrated deck in my opinion, one last hidden gem. This is a Sacred Symbols oracle deck by Marcella Kroll. This is originally an indie deck, and this was on my wish list for years. I can't tell you how many years this was on my wish list when it was indie, but it was just so complicated for me to ship it to where I live that it was just one of those that sat on my wish list. It was picked up mass market by Sterling Ethos. I think it was earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, potentially like January or something. Or maybe even the end of last year, I can't remember, but I got this early in the year, and I was so pumped that this had been picked up mass market, because this was one of those decks I'd been wanting for so long. First of all, can we talk about those backs? Oh my god, so beautiful. I think maybe one of my favorite backs ever, if I'm being completely honest. Just something about that color choices that I absolutely adore. This is a symbols oracle, meaning that the style is going to be very minimalistic because every single card represents a symbol, and that's it. It's very simplified, kind of magical work, helping you to work with the symbols for whether it's divination, magic, meditation, rituals. Very straight to the point, one card, one symbol. There's symbol for, like, we have occult symbolism here, astrological symbolism, esoteric symbolism, magical symbolism, witchcraft, some kind of mythological symbolism here with the Ankh for new life. And here we have the feather of Mat for truth. So there's different inspiration, but overall it's symbols that are universal, like a lot of us would recognize them. There was a couple I didn't know, but I knew most of them, and I really appreciate again the fact that it's straight to the point. One color, one symbol, and one keyword. I was very much attracted to the simplicity of it. Sometimes that's what I was saying earlier. I have a very eclectic taste. Sometimes I love a collage that's going to be layers upon layers and a lot of information and a lot of details. And sometimes I'm into this. Very simple, straight to the point, straightforward, easy to understand. It's actually been a joy to pair with so many decks, even with Tarot de Marseille decks, like my older historical decks, and this together, because of the fact that it's like very minimalistic artwork. They just sing so beautifully together, and I'm so happy because I was kind of like struggling to find decks that I thought were speaking the same speech as my Marseille deck, and this does, because this reuses a lot of like older historical symbolism that's been with humanity for like decades and centuries. I also really enjoyed it to use as like for energy reading, so if I want to know the energies of the weeks ahead or months ahead or the days ahead, etc., this has been very useful for me for that. And also for magical work, like if I'm doing some kind of altar work and I'm trying to either bring some energies out or invite some energies in. This is great placeholders for that. You can work with crystals and candles and things and use those particular cards to kind of build your own little altar. That works really well for that. I think you could also use this for a meditation, like if you are trying to work with this particular energy of being grounded, you could meditate with the anchor, using these as kind of almost little portals to bring that magical essence of the symbol into your life. There's a lot you can do with this particular deck, and it feels very magical, even though it's very simple in its concept. It's simple but effective and very potent, and I appreciate it. I think it's like there's something to be said about managing to make something that is simple and that works. I think that in itself is underrated. The guidebook is interesting for each of the cards. We have a little bit of a message. We have an explanation of the symbol, so what it is, where it comes from. Here, for example, whether it's an alchemical symbol, an astrological symbol, things like that. Honestly, I've not been using the guidebook a lot because again, this deck just works as is for me. Definitely for me, underrated. I've not seen that many people talk about it since it's released, and I think that's a shame because it's awesome and I wanted to share it with you. So my friends, this is it. This was episode 2 of my underrated mass market hidden gems deck. Please let me know in the comments, 1, if you've enjoyed this, if you want to see more, and 2, what are your underrated mass market decks? What are the mass market decks, Oracle or Tarot, that you believe deserves more love, more time in the spotlight, that you think more people should know about? I would love to know, and I always enjoy us having conversation in the comments. I want to say a huge thank you for being here. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for hanging out together. And until my next video, I'm sending you so much good vibes and keep navigating the waves of your soul. Bye!